Hello, welcome back to the only podcast that can love you 6 ways to Sunday. It's out on that line. My name is Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, are you ready to leave a scar?
You totally stole my thunder. When you asked me how I was, do you know what I was going to say? I'm going to love you 6 ways to Sunday, Jeff, on today's episode with Blackberry Smoke. I was sitting dead red waiting to hit you with that, and then you punked me. You suckered me, Rick. But it was a good
I
intro,
can't
so
it's
respect.
just it's the lightning bolt of creativity that just hits me sometimes when I'm bored as shit at work, waiting for customers to walk through that door to buy themselves a nice new living room set. And I just got to think of something to pass the time. And these intros have become my favorite thing to consider while I'm just sitting there doing nothing else.
See, that used to be me when I was pooping, and now I do Duolingo while I'm pooping. So I guess I'm creatively bankrupt.
Well, you only have so much time you can commit to your hobbies.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk this week about the Blackberry Smoke album, The Whippoorwill. And when we decided to do this album, I think this was your idea. And I jumped on immediately because I was like, what a great idea. I did not think of it at all myself. But this album is so fantastic, top to bottom, that it took over our friend group for a while. Like there was a group of us that the Blackberry Smoke would be pretty much all we listened to. And then this album came out and that solidified every bit of that.
Do you recall? I know it wasn't me, but do you recall who got the ball rolling with Blackberry Smoke in the group?
It could have been, I want to say it was either me or Brandon Martin. And you can
Okay.
bleep the last name if we're not doing full government names on the podcast. But friend of the pod, Brandon, um, I would assume. I mean, I don't know if it was around the same time or where one of us might have heard it, but he's always sharing music with me. I try to share some with him, so like it could have very well been him. But once I heard Blackberry Smoke, that was exactly what I wanted because I love like Leonard Skinner, I love Molly Hatchet, like I love Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like I love that old like blues and like southern rock. Like I love the Georgia Satellites. My God,
Mm.
that Going South CD. Do you remember that? That like
Oh yeah.
compilation CD? Oh, fantastic, fantastic compilation album. But Blackberry Smoke came out and they were like the modern day version of that. This new school southern rock. And it was like grungy, it was dirty, it was bluesy, it was danceable. It was so good. And there was just this attitude to it, just like it was a middle finger to not having fun. And it was just so fantastic to hear a band like that because the Black Crows were great, but they were definitely like way up their own asses,
Oh
especially
yeah.
especially
Killed him.
Chris Robinson. Yeah. And Blackberry Smoke just doesn't strike me as a band that's like that. Like they just like being able to make a living out of playing some badass rock and roll.
I love when you go on a Wikipedia page and you see no section that says past members. And Blackberry Smoke, they added people.
Mhm.
Nobody left. It's a good gig. They make music straight from the heart, and it scratches that Black Crows kind of itch because when Black Crows is good, Black Crows is great.
Mhm.
But they imploded because they're a bunch of dickheads. So Blackberry Smoke is kind of giving us more stuff in that vein, not aping the Black Crows, but giving us more, like I said, scratching that itch
Mhm.
consistently, making their own brand of like whatever you want to call it, swamp rock. I know
Mhm.
that one of the albums, and I'm totally going up on which, but it was like number one country album for Billboard.
Mhm.
So they're not some kind of obscure outfit here.
Yeah.
They've really done well for themselves, just like being technically excellent at the genre they've chosen. And they went straight down that kind of gut bucket southern rock direction.
Mhm.
And then they wind up, and we'll get into it, like they end up subverting a lot of stereotypes along the way, which is another thing that makes them so enjoy, like such a like guilt-free treat, you know?
Yes. And I think there's always, there's your kind of cliche sort of southern rock country stuff that they talk about, like the song I'm Gonna Love You 6 Ways to Sunday. I want to hear that woman speaking in tongues. There's only one kind of
Mhm.
music that those kind of lyrics are gonna show up in. Like, I don't think that's gonna be in like top 40 pop songs. Like that's a old school rock and roll song. That's the only place those lyrics can really show up. And that's why I love Blackberry Smoke, because they'll have songs like Six Ways to Sunday. The lyrics are well written. Like you said, it's technically excellent. Like, they are so good at playing that Southern rock and that blues. And what's his name? Charlie Starr, the lead singer. It's like a fantastic guitar player and singer. Like, he's
Mm.
just got a very warm kind of presence to his performance. It's you believe it. I've seen them live and they put on such a good show. And that was the one that the temperance movement opened for them. So the temperance movement was also fantastic. They've broken up since then, but that was, I mean, going from temperance movement right into Blackberry Smoke. I like, there are a few concerts that were as good all the way through, like that one was, from like opening band all the way through the headliner. Blackberry Smoke is that band. I mean, they are gonna this type of music. I mean, look how long ZZ Top was making like new albums, like forever, because there's always, you just got to be able to come up with new ideas and lyrics, and because the structures are going to remain very similar. You can like throw them up in the air and kind of put them back together in different ways. You can change where a bridge might go to make it sound fresh and new, but they're so versed in this genre that I feel like if there is a band that's just going to play for the rest of their natural lives, it's Blackberry Smoke.
You just took the words right out of my mouth, because I was gonna say they are gonna be as fantastic to see now as they were 10 years ago, as they will be 10 years into the future. And when they're old men, and I absolutely did see a bunch of, sunglasses and beards, not unlike ZZ Top, I think
Hmm.
they are truly a group that's going to just be consistently enjoyable and consistently put out great rock and roll. And it's nice to have something like that to look forward to be honest, because like the wheels tend to fall off a lot of people in their personal lives and their
Hmm.
creative output. Some you just lose some people, they just spin away. But Blackberry Smoke feels like one of those acts that you love, that's going to be consistent. You can see them for the rest of your life, for the rest of their
Hmm.
lives, and it's going to be as fun and as powerful as it was the first time you heard it.
Yes, and I think that's the thing, is there are certain songs when they hit, I am immediately pumped up, like Leave a Scar. I mean, that
Mm.
riff, like, that's the thing, is they are so good at just like getting in the pocket, and just it just can go so hard. And that riff, Ain't Much Left of Me, is like that kind of slower, real bluesy type of song. And then Leave a Scar has that like really crunchy, fast, like almost like a punk, like a Motorhead kind of riff. It's like it had that kind of speed, that energy, that they can go from one end to the other. And then you get a song like Ain't Got the Blues, which is just a classic, like acoustic guitar being its own percussion kind of blues song. And then they go into, and then it just like kind of this sweet little kind of interlude and fill, and the rest of the band kicks in on that song. And it's just so like, and I can say this because I've lived in Texas for a long time now, better part of a decade. It's so Southern. Like, every part of this is so Southern, and it just feels like exactly where it's from. And that's the beauty, is it that word, man, that word, authenticity. I don't know if there is a band that does it better than Blackberry Smoke, and especially on this album. Like, it's just hit after hit after hit.
Well, and it's not gimmicky, which is my complaint about a lot of stuff. Like confession time, was probably a little more dazzled by Luke Combs than I should have been when I first heard Fear Never Broke My Heart and Deep Sea Scenery to Fishing. And I still really love those songs, but in the way that like
Mhm.
I think everybody gets grandfathered into Toby Keith. My dad is served in the army. So I was a little, more enthusiastic about Luke Combs than maybe I should have been, because all of those mentions of like big mouth bass and I'm fishing in the creek and all that kind of stuff is formulaic. doesn't have to be in the it depends on how you say it, right? You can take something
Mhm.
formulaic and make it seem kind of profound. Like one thing I've mentioned before that I do respect that Luke Combs did because it had to have been intentional. And it's one of those nerdy read between the line things, but I won a used four-wheeler and 3 free passes for me and 2 of my buddies to play a round of golf. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, it shows you put a little thought into
Yeah.
that. So I was giving him a lot of credit based on that. But then you have something like Blackberry Smoke where they talk about little lies, dot all of your cross all your T's and dot your I's in little lie for this little lie or like whatever the
Yeah.
actual like you thought about it because there's I's and T's in a lot of words. I get it, but
Mhm.
in little lies. So it's one of those nice little twists that shows you they were thinking about it. And authenticity was the word you were talking about. When they say she gets me high as a Georgia pine, I don't see it as a gimmick.
Mhm.
When I die, lay my bones in the Dixie dirt. I believe that shit.
Mhm.
And this is where I think we get into like, what do they represent as Southern rock? You get something like Sweet Home Alabama. In Birmingham, they love the governor. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Or is
Mhm.
it boo, boo, boo? Because it was George Wallace, I believe. So was it an endorsement or was it, kind of a repudiation? And it goes back and forth, right? Was Leonard Skinner racist? There is an ongoing debate about that. There
Mhm.
is no debate with Blackberry Smoke because what they bring to the table is you can be proud of where you come from and not be a representative of the stereotypes of where you come from. Yes,
Mhm.
there are those people, but they suck up a lot of oxygen compared to like good folks who just want to make this kind of music and listen to this kind of music and
Mhm.
go their own way. And there's like a real purity to this kind of music they're making. Again, guilt free. It's
Mhm.
just like wonderful craft that someone is sharing with you.
Yeah, and well, you were saying "Everybody Knows She's Mine" was one that you had wanted to talk about because that is you mentioned the lyrics, "She gets me higher than a Georgia pine," but he also says, "Wild as a muscadine wine, hotter than the deep South summertime. Yeah, everybody knows she's mine." I just want to point out just like how descriptively Southern these lyrics are. Like black and the name Blackberry Smoke. Like there should be no misconceptions about what type of music you're about to listen to. Like if you don't like the Georgia Satellites, if you don't like Molly Hatchet, if you don't like Leonard Skinner or the Allman Brothers, like you are probably not going to like Blackberry Smoke. They If Blackberry Smoke existed at the same time as all those other bands, in the 70s and 80s, I think they're just as popular as any of them. In that heyday of like the most popular ever Southern music, I think Blackberry Smoke makes this album, The Whippoorwill, is just as good as anything else any of those other bands ever did in that time period.
And yeah, I put a song like Shaking Hands with the Holy Ghost up against, you know, any of the contemporary hits or anything that came before.
Mhm.
That song, like you said, could be transplanted to any era, any decade, and it just fits. It's timeless. It's truly timeless. Again, it's like the band itself. It's going to smash as hard as it does now in 20, 30 years. They make truly timeless music because it's not overly complicated, but it's technical, it's tight, you know?
Mhm.
And they have a lot of versatility. You can do a song that's like hell bent for leather, like Shaking Hands with the Holy Ghost. Just
Mhm.
just right into it. But then you can also do a song like The Whippoorwill, which is tender and kind of swings, and they do some like really interesting phrasing and kind of leaning into time signatures and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it's wonderful in the same way that not on this album, but Woman in the Moon from Holding All the Roses, another great album.
Yes.
And just like a great, I don't know if you want to call it ballad, but it's this very stripped back, kind of spacey love song. And they can do that kind of thing and do it
Mhm.
super, super well. I think it lends itself to nostalgia for that reason. It's just going to keep getting better. Certain
Yeah.
things don't hold up, but this is one thing that for our friend group, we will never not pop for Blackberry Smoke. No one will
Yes.
ever say skip a Smoke song.
No. And because no matter what sort of environment you're in, it's always going to work. It's like it's everyman music. That's what it is.
Yes.
If you can't get into Blackberry Smoke, and anybody that I've ever been with that didn't already know them, if a Blackberry Smoke came on, the majority of the time the person goes, "Who's this?" Because it sounds so good. It's so familiar, it's so good, it's so well done, and it's interesting, and it's familiar enough to make you comfortable, but it's interesting enough to catch your attention. It doesn't get lost like a lot of songs do. The Blackberry Smoke hits me the same way that like Bob Seger hits me. I hear a Seger song come on, like there's no skips on that baby. That's I'm gonna listen to whatever song it is. I don't care. I don't care if it's old time rock and roll. I'll still listen to it. I'll
I don't
do
care
it
if it's
just because it's
Catmandu.
yeah, just because it's Seeger, baby. That's all it takes. But Blackberry Smoke is the same way. The Whippoorwill is fantastic. One Horse Town, fantastic. I mean, they can go slow. They can go, like you said, hell bent for leather, and they do it all like perfectly. Nothing ever feels out of place on this album. It is extremely good top to bottom. I think it's their best album, among a batch of very, very good ones. I think this is the one that kind of stands out above the rest. There's also the live album Leave a Scar, which is that baby is a barn burner if you get a chance to listen to that. But I don't know if it truly counts as like a regular album, or you can say it's a better album of their studio releases. Like the Whippoorwill is my favorite one.
Yeah, I would say this is probably my favorite. Holding All the Roses being a very close second.
Mm-hmm.
There's like you said, if you're not predisposed to like this kind of thing, this is the kind of thing you're not gonna like. But every now and then you get to be a great ambassador for Blackberry Smoke, like to wit, your point about people going, "Who's this?" Happened today at my office.
Mm-hmm.
My like supervisor, guy that I work with, whatever, can only be described as a guy who loves Talking Heads, Oingo Boingo, Devo. He just likes that, craft work. He really loves that kind of
Uh,
weird robot music. And he has very much like that personality. He's a good shit. He's a cool guy, but he very much has that kind of like art rock kind of aesthetic. And the last guy that should like Blackberry Smoke, and I had this album blasting while I thought he
mm-hmm.
was at lunch, and all of a sudden his head comes in and he's like, "Who is this?" They're still doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing it independently. Bless their pea picking little hearts.
Yes, and their album art is always really cool. Like it's very different. The Whippoorwill is very different than Holding All the Roses. Like it's a very, very cool aesthetic they have. It's kind of this like witchy hippie sort of vibe, especially their bass player. That dude, he wears when we saw them. So I saw them with Brandon and Tanner, and when we saw them, he was wearing like this like a Mexican kind of textile poncho type thing, and looked like he was about to nod off, man. Like he was just sitting there, eyes closed, just like swaying along. But and some of those bass lines are like pretty active. They're all very technically sound players in that whole band, and you can see his fingers are moving, but it doesn't look like the lights are on at all. Like that's just muscle memory. He just clicked the button on his forearm and it knew where to go, and he could just sleep through the show. And but everybody else was killing it. Like, and he was too, but he just like no energy, just like standing there swaying slowly. And it was phenomenal. But that was the vibe that I get from them. It's like it's a very specific kind of music, but it's a very broad sort of people that can appreciate that kind of music. Like if you're from the South, you're going to appreciate it just from the references they make. If you like rock and roll, you're going to appreciate it because it just fucking rocks. And if you like just storytelling, you've got songs like One Horse Town and Everybody Knows She's Mine. It's you've got something for everybody here. This is like the department store of rock and roll music, but it's stuff you actually want to buy. Blackberry Smoke does like accessible rock and roll, I think, better than anybody.
And it spans generations too. I haven't tried to go as low as Zoomer, but like my parents can enjoy this. My grandparents actually really like Blackberry Smoke. I snuck some in
Mhm.
at their anniversary party, and they were like, I also snuck in some Jimmy Barnes, but
Let's
yeah, they were like,
go.
yeah, because my uncle is just like, let's have Perry Como and all this stuff. I'm like, you're gonna put me into a Perry Coma if I don't jazz this shit up. Let's get the people. This is a 70th wedding anniversary. Okay. If there's not any Blackberry Smoke, you did it wrong. The 70th anniversary,
Mhm.
as everyone knows, you got your gold and champagne and platinum and paper and all that shit. The 70th is the Blackberry Smoke anniversary. And I did it.
Yes.
I got it in there.
Yes.
And my grandparents legitimately were like, "It's really good. I really like that. Wasn't expecting that. That was good." I'm like, yeah, no shit. And they're 90. So what's your excuse if you don't like Blackberry Smoke?
There is no excuse. So you should go check this album out. And I'm talking to you, listeners. You got to go check out The Whippoorwill by Blackberry Smoke. And while you're at it, check out the rest of Blackberry Smoke. Check out the Leave a Scar live album because it's phenomenal. Watch some live videos so you can see the lead singer's chops. This dude has the best sideburns you've ever seen in your goddamn life. It is fantastic. And he rips on the guitar. He is phenomenal at guitar. Just a classic rock and roll frontman that does a fantastic job. Check out this album. And Alex, where are they going to find other albums talked about like this one was?
That's very smooth, Jeff. You did quite well with that one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Jeff, youtube.com/city/ out on that line. It's something we've discussed a lot in the past, how there's a veritable treasure trove of singles videos, which sometimes I go back and look at and cringe all the skin off my face. Mine, not yours, my own work. You know, we're our own worst critic. I look at our early reaction videos to where we are now. I look at our podcast episodes to where we are now. Remember when we were doing 2.5 hour episodes trying to cover 2 albums in their entirety? Pepperidge
Yes.
Farm remembers, and it's all trapped in amber on YouTube at youtube.com/C/ out on that line. Folks, get over there, subscribe, like, leave a comment. We need you to do all of it, okay? Like, there's no, many are called and few answer, and we're looking to change that. You have been activated at youtube.com/C/ out on that line.
Once again, couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time.